and making your profit margin so small that you might be struggling financially as a result because of that pricing. Yeah, Hanan says I explained it well for nurture. Yeah. Calcadown, for our products, the price is cost plus profit system. And Calcadown, when it comes to profit, like how much of a profit margin are you trying to add on to your products? Is it a decent margin? Is it a very slim margin? What does that look like for you? Because it's important to remember when it comes to your margin, with inflation, things are going to become more expensive for you as a producer. So when you keep your margin too low, it's going to be very difficult to absorb any additional costs to your supply chain, so to any of your inputs for your products, and still keep that same margin. Like you're just going to keep eating, and eventually you'll have to pass on that cost somehow to your client, to your customers. Now, if your profit margin is a bit higher, then you have a bit more of a buffer. Like you can absorb some extra costs and still have a profit margin, maybe not as big of one, but you still have one without passing on any impact to your consumer for a while. So that's something to consider, and something that you guys can talk about more next week when you work with Monica on your financial modeling. Joanna says, with a Maverick archetype, I tend to let the client decide if you want to buy or not without explaining too much. Very interesting. And that's a great point, because as a Maverick, you know, what they say is that you're all or nothing, like you're taking a risk. You're not really, you kind of sabotage is what they say. Something could go well and you sabotage it. And maybe your sabotage here, Joanna, is that you're not doing that follow-up. You're not doing the work to convince your customer that what you have is what they need. You're just allowing them to make that decision on their own. And if you were to follow a follow-up process, you might find a lot better results because of that. So great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So with this awareness that you now have about your archetype, what changes can you make? What changes can you make now that you have this awareness? Whether it's to your pricing, whether it's to how you pay yourself, whether it's to your attitude towards saving or investing. I'd love to hear from you what changes you can make. So Ruth says, I set prices that are fairly and fair, reflecting the true value of my products. Is that a change that you would like to make, Ruth, or that's something that you feel you're doing already? Nina says that she wants to be customer-centric and focus on long-term gains. And remember, you can be customer-centric and still charge a valid price, right? You don't have to feel like you undercut everything or you offer things at a cheap price just to get more and more customers in. Excuse me, it's really about finding that balance between who is your market, who is your target market, and what are they willing to pay. Hold on. Oh, your ladies are writing a lot. Oh, so Cabiso, disclaimer, response may be biased. That's okay. I price based on what I would be willing to pay for the service if I was the customer, which I use experience and quality as a standard measure. It's an interesting approach. And yeah, it is a biased approach because, you know, you actually might pay less than your customers. Like you might be willing to pay less. You might also be willing to pay more. So it's a way to do it, but it's not necessarily the best way to do it, just because there's always going to be that internal bias. You know, over the years, my prices have changed, and typically in an upward direction rather than a downward direction. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about pricing, you can just add incremental increases every 6 months or every year or every 18 months even. You know, it's funny how as business owners, we often feel like we can't increase our prices, and yet every single time we go to the store, whether it's the grocery store, the clothing store, or the shoe store, the prices are going up. So all of these other businesses are able to increase their prices, not only in line with inflation, but also the cost of goods that they're buying. And yet we as business owners feel like we can't do that. And even sometimes our customers feel like we shouldn't do that, which is very unfair. So I have another tool that I can share with you ladies after the class about how to price without the emotion. We're gonna go through a piece of it today, but not the entire thing, but I can definitely share it with you so that you can really start to think about pricing in a very vanilla, black and white sort of way. You know, there's no emotion there. It just shows you this is what you should be charging, and this amount is going to allow you to cover all of the costs within your business. Adez, with this awareness, I will review my prices to reflect the true value that I am giving to my clients. Great. Solange, my archetype is accumulator. What I really want to work on is to take more risks because I know I lose some opportunities because of that. And when you say risks, Solange, what sort of risks are you thinking of? Like investment risks, or let me know. I'd love to hear more about that. Bola Tiana, I have difficulty to say no when my clients bargain the price. I need to work on accepting that the price defines the quality of the product and the expense I have and learn to stick on it. Yeah, same thing. Like if you were to go into a store, and I don't know what like the local chain grocery store is in all of your respective countries, but let's say I were to go into my local grocery store and I see the price of something. I'm not going to bargain. I'm just going to say, okay, that's the price. And I either make a decision there and then to buy it or to not buy it based on whatever the cost is. And again, yet as small business owners or independent business owners, customers feel like they can come and bargain with us. And why? Like you would never do that if you go into the store and you see a price tag on something. So a lot of the times it's really about building our confidence around why we price the way that we do, to know that it's a fair price and to be confident in sticking to it. And having empathy with your customer. Like if they say it's too expensive, you say, I get it, I understand, I know what it's like to see something that I really want and I can't afford it. And leave it at that. You know, what will happen is they might come back in the future, they might not, but you know, often when we tend to discount, we have some sort of resentment, some ill feeling towards having to go through that process. If you're offering a service, another thing that you can do, especially if you work in a country where the culture likes to bargain, it happens in Kenya all the time. You can start higher. You can quote higher, knowing that your customer is going to want to bargain, and then you come down to a price that actually feels right for you. So rather than starting at your normal price, let's say just arbitrarily, let's say whatever service you're offering costs $2,000 US, and that's the price that you know that you need to be able to make in order to cover your expenses, to pay yourself, et cetera, et cetera. And you live in a place where people want to bargain. I would start at like $2,300 and allow them to bring you down. And that way they feel like they're still getting a discount, but in your mind, you know that it's not a discount, that it's going to cover everything and that you feel great about that number. So that's a tip that I often offer to my clients of, you know, if they're feeling like that their clients are going to try to bargain, just start with a higher number so that you don't actually lose out on your profit margin. Jehan, as a ruler and nurturer, I should be more focused on reminding my financial health and do my best to be more effective instead of working hard with reduced margins or results. Yeah. Rumran, as a nurturer, I would look towards the sustainability of my product, considering my prices more than offering temporary support to the needy, and am unable to continually make products available and end my business due to unfair prices. Yeah, you know, especially if you have like a social impact model embedded into your business, you do need to figure out how to make a profit in one part of your business so that you can do support in other parts, whether that's a not-for-profit setup or donations or just other sort of support mechanisms, and finding that split model where you're able to earn money on one side in order to pay for activities on another side. Ruth says, I don't feel the need to change them at the moment. Okay. Solange, for example, I recruit new employees based on the volume of business I already have guaranteed. Okay. So rather than recruiting and planning and hoping that that business is coming, you only bring people on board when you know that you have demand for what they're doing, is how I read that. Nina says, my clients are students and have difficulty to say no to their requests for deferring tuition payments, even though I have my own monthly fixed expenses. I don't know how I should improve my behavior towards my students. Yeah, so I get it. I know that especially for students, like, you know, money can be a challenge for them. They may not have it. They may need to ask their parents for it. And it might just be that they're getting money and they're spending it frivolously and not really planning ahead. So one thing that kind of comes to mind, and maybe you're doing this already, Nina, so just let me know, maybe you can offer payment plans. So, that they don't have to pay the entire amount upfront at the start of the term, but they can break it out over 2 months or 3 months or whatever that might look like for you. Or maybe it's even a monthly payment throughout the year, even when school isn't in session. And perhaps also giving them some sort of education around financial management so that they know, hey, this is an amount that's coming due, and these are the times that we need to make them due, and seeing if that kind of helps, just with educating them. From an internal perspective, though, if you are continuously dealing with late payments from clients, or in this case from students, just having, again, awareness that that is your business cycle. So if you know that every invoice that you send out is going to take 30 days to get paid, or maybe 60 days to get paid, then you need to keep that in mind when you're now having your expenses, and really try to have 2 months of savings, if you like, in the bank, so that you're constantly able to keep up your monthly expenses while you're waiting for those payments to come in from the other side. So setting up a cash flow system where it's all of my payments have to go out every single month, but it might take me 2 months to get something in, and building up that financial reserve. Kalkadan says, I don't understand how the archetype is related with the price that we set. Can you please give some other explanation? Sure. Kalkadan, can you remind me what yours is? I'm trying to scroll up, but there's so many. So many. Okay, so hers is Maverick. Okay, so let me just quickly look at the description. Okay, so as a Maverick, it may not impact your prices per se, but it might impact your client acquisition process. So for example, it says that as a Maverick, you get restless. So you might have to, you might get bored. You might be offering something different every month because you're bored of the thing that you were offering before. What that also might look like is that you change whatever it is that you're offering. So let's say you're offering a service and you price it at a certain point. Again, let's use an arbitrary number. So let's say you have a service and you price it at $500 US, and no one's buying at that price, right? Next month, you might kill that service completely and design something from scratch, brand new, because people weren't buying at that price. Now, this new service you price at $300, thinking, okay, they weren't willing to pay $500, maybe they're willing to pay $300. And again, you're getting, no one is buying. So you start from scratch again, you tear everything down, you rebuild it, and you try to put another service out there that people are willing to buy. The same applies to products, right? Like you might find that people aren't interested in buying at whatever price it is that you set. So rather than giving it the time that it needs to grow, rather than spending time nurturing your customer relationships and getting them comfortable with purchasing, you may just destroy everything and start over and over and over and over again, rather than letting things take time to develop. Now, that's not a direct impact on your pricing, but it might be related in some ways, because you might see that someone isn't buying at a particular price, and rather than tweaking the price or doing market research or having conversations to figure out what their hesitations are, you just destroy it and start over again. Does that resonate with you at all? Does that sound completely wrong? Like, let me know if that makes sense. Yeah, okay. As a maverick, you can also be, she calls you like a rule breaker. So you might go completely against convention and do something completely different than what your peers and your competitors are doing, which makes you different from your competition, but you may not be putting the time and effort into the sales process to actually make it work. Okay, great. It resonates very much and I understand. Perfect. If any of you other ladies want an example, like again, jump into the chat, let me know what your archetype is and I can also share like how it might impact your pricing. Or other parts of your business. Let me know. Okay. Alchemist, please, how does it impact your pricing? Okay, so the Alchemist, hold on, let me pull it up again. So she says that the Alchemist is an inner idealist. So as an alchemist, you might magic up something. So you just make things work somehow. Now, how can that impact your pricing is, again, like it could be, let me think of a good example. Again, I don't necessarily think it might be pricing related, but I think it's maybe more around like your systems and processes around your business. So pricing is one component of that, but how I see it impacting an alchemist and what you're doing is, for example, if you're just magically making things happen, you probably don't have set procedures that you can replicate every single time. So rather than having something that you can follow and say, okay, I know that this is a proven formula. I know that if I sell this at this price to these people, it's always going to work. Here are the processes that support that. Here's how I can make my business easier. You're just making it happen. So you're quickly moving from one customer to the next customer to the next customer, maybe without really thinking about how it's impacting your business and how you can maybe be more efficient or more effective or more streamlined. Those are things that come to mind. Like as an alchemist, you just have like this belief that everything's going to work out somehow, and not necessarily putting structure in place around that, which can have a detrimental impact on your business later as you grow. When that comes to your pricing, though, again, it might be that you're very scattered with your pricing, that maybe you're changing your pricing. So every single time a customer comes to you, you're quoting something different based on how you're feeling in that moment, rather than having that set policy and procedure in place. Now, let me know if that resonates. Okay, so Kalkanan says, with this understanding, I want to make change in giving time instead of starting again from scratch. Yeah, great. There are going to be times in business where you do have to start over, where you do have to like get rid of your service or your product and come up with a different idea. But you can't make that decision after just 1 month. Sometimes you can't even make that decision after 3 months. Like you really need to test out different parts of the process, because it's easy to think that, oh, it's not working, but maybe it's just one tweak that you need to make somewhere in your sales process that will abundantly change everything. And the only way that you can know that is by making those small changes and watching the progress that comes from that. And not changing everything at once, right? Just changing maybe one piece of your marketing channel or your sales cycle or your conversation patterns, and just testing to see if that makes a difference. Okay, perfect. So I now want to move on to helping you ladies understand your numbers a bit more. So now money is about numbers. Before it was more about mindset and beliefs and behaviors. And I'd like you to sit with these archetypes and just start to notice, like now that you know that this is who you tend to be, just start to notice in your business, like where is that showing up? How is that showing up? Is this, anytime that you're making a financial decision or you're investing in something or you're starting a new process or you're launching a new product, just really sit with that and think, okay, is my archetype coming out here? And if so, is it coming out in a positive way, or do I need to manage some of these weaknesses? So now I want to move on to understanding your numbers and how to actually improve your money matters. So we're going to go through 4 different pieces in this next section. The first is around setting a budget, so that you really understand what salary do you need to be taking from your business in order to live your life, to cover your lifestyle. We're not going to be talking about business budgets today. That's going to be next week when you work on your finances with Monica. But we are going to just be raising awareness around your personal budgets and what that needs to look like for you. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is how to keep track of your money. So making sure that not only are you setting a budget, but you're actually monitoring whether you're within that budget or whether you're overspending or underspending, and having that habit that you build up to keeping your eye on finances. The next thing I want to teach you is how to calculate your net worth. Your net worth is basically the amount of assets that you have, whether that's cash or property, etc., minus any debts that you have. Now, we'll get into that. I'll tell you why it's important to know that number and how you can improve yours. And then the final thing that we're going to spend some time doing is building financial goals. So talking about what sort of things are important to you, both personally and professionally, when it comes to money, and allowing you to identify what those first steps are going to look like. So the first question I have for you is, don't put this in the chat. This is for you to write down on the piece of paper in front of you. How much do you think that your desired lifestyle costs on a monthly basis? How much does your desired lifestyle cost? Now, the reason I use the word desired is because maybe it's not your current lifestyle. Maybe there are things that you know you want to be able to do differently. For example, maybe you want to send your kids to a different school. Maybe you want to be able to take holidays. Maybe you want to build an emergency fund or make some investments, but you're not doing those things yet. That's okay. I want you just to roughly write down the number that you think your desired lifestyle costs, and keep that to yourself, but just have that there in front of you, okay? I'll give you 1 minute to pick that number for yourself. All right, now let's figure out how accurate that is. So what I want you to now consider, and so you have your initial number, which is fine, but now I want you to break that down further and see how accurate your number is. So the first, and again, don't share this with me in the chat. This is for your eyes only, to write down on a piece of paper in front of you, or even on a spreadsheet if you prefer. And I'm going to take you through some themes, and you can now start to put some more realistic numbers against them. So when you're setting your budget, the first thing I want you to consider is, again, on a monthly basis, how much do you need each month for your mortgage or rent payment? Your mortgage or rent. If you're not paying for these things, just write down 0. If you want to be paying more for these things because, again, maybe you want to buy a house and finance it, or maybe you want to move into a bigger apartment and pay more rent, then this is really a place for you to also think about that desired lifestyle amount. But whatever the number is, just write it down. What do you need on a monthly basis for your mortgage and rent? Or rent, rather. And this is just personal, not business stuff. The next number to calculate is how much you need monthly for all of your utilities. So this will be things like your mobile phone, your internet, electricity, gas, like cooking gas. What else do we pay for? Water. You might also have like garbage collection services that you pay for, which can go under utilities. So whatever the number is, Wi-Fi also. So whatever that number is, just write down all of those different expenses and come up with the top number. Now, for example, you might be paying for, like, for example, your electricity, you might not pay on a monthly basis. Maybe you have prepaid tokens and you just put a certain amount on and it lasts you 6 weeks rather than 4 weeks. So just come up with a rough number if that's the case. Same with gas, cooking gas canisters. Like, I know that my gas can will last me maybe 3 months, so I'm not buying it every single month. But in that instance, I can take the price, which is roughly around 3,000 shillings right now, divide it by 3 months and come up with a monthly number of 1,000 shillings, or roughly $10. The next number I want you to calculate after that one is on groceries. How much are you spending every month on food? whether it's in a supermarket or a local market or a corner store, wherever you're buying your groceries, how much money do you need each month for that? And I don't want you here to consider like eating out, like if you're going out and entertaining, that's going to be further down the list in a different section. So just for pure groceries that are coming into your home, and like cleaning products or anything else that you need within your house. The next number is on transportation. So for transportation, this can be either public transportation or private transportation. So consider things like public transportation. So if you're using buses or shared car rides, here we call them matatus, the minivans. If you're using Uber, if you're using any sort of public type of transportation, how much are you spending monthly? And also, if you have a private vehicle, here's where you want to consider your private vehicle charges. So, for example, fuel costs, petrol or diesel, insurance. And again, insurance isn't going to be paid every month. It's probably going to be paid annually. So take whatever your annual number is and divide it by 12 to get a monthly number. You'll also want to think about parking charges, maintenance, like sending it to the mechanic, getting a full service. What are those sorts of things looking like if you have a private vehicle? So add up all of those costs and come up with a number for transportation. Then you have any school or university fees for yourself or for any of your dependents. My son isn't yet in school, but he goes to, for example, playgroup twice a week. So that would be something that I would consider like a school fee, even though it's not proper school yet. So anything that you're spending there, and again, this might be aspirational. You know, my son won't be in school for another few years, and I know that school fees are around the corner. So I might start to want to budget for that now, so that I can save it and then not stress about it later. So as with some of the other topics, school fees are typically not paid on a monthly basis. They might be paid every term. So you might want to take the annual cost of school and divide it by 12 to get a monthly number. And school fees can also be for you. So, for example, if you're, it doesn't necessarily need to be like traditional school, like university, but if you're investing in professional development or personal development, for you, that, or for anyone within your family, that can also go into this category. No, Nina, you don't have to share the details. It's just for you. Then the next line item here is on appearance. So appearance is, you know, how much you're spending on clothes, how much you're spending on hair care, how much you're spending on, maybe you're getting your nails done or manicure, pedicure, or maybe you are buying makeup, maybe you are well, anything like that, anything appearance related, clothing, shoes, makeup, hair care, nail care, et cetera, et cetera. How much are you spending in this space? Or want to be spending in the space? Again, like you can look at this aspirationally to figure out, what does your desired lifestyle look like? And then there's a line for leisure activities. So leisure can be all sorts of different things. It might be dining out with your friends or family. It might be going to the cinema. It might be going on a holiday. It might be going for a self-care activity like a massage or a class or anything like that. So think about your leisure activities, your different hobbies, your interests, not just for yourself, but maybe also for your kids if you're sending your kids out to any sort of things like that, birthday parties, etc., and calculate whatever that number looks like for you monthly. As business owners, especially when we're getting going and may not have much money coming in, our leisure activities are typically the ones that suffer first, and we pull back on a lot of the things that we do, which bring us joy and excitement and fun, and that can have negative impacts on our mental well-being and mental health. So, being realistic about what it is that you want to be able to do and what that number looks like is very helpful, because then it can help you set targets for what you need to be paying yourself ultimately from your business. Yes, exactly what Nina has just said. So since I started my entrepreneurial journey, I take less care of my appearance, clothing, handbags. I just make do with what I had before. Exactly. And that will happen, right? The same as, like I said, leisure activities. Like we choose where to put our priorities. Like our priorities are certainly going to be on living rather than, necessarily how we look or buying new things or going on holidays. We'll prioritize, food and shelter and those basic necessities over that. And that's okay. But the goal is not to be in that place forever where you feel like you're lacking in life because you're starting a business or running a business. Ultimately, we want to get our businesses to a place where we can have the lifestyle that we want. And it is truly possible to do with some planning and, product market fit and understanding how to grow. So the last line just says, and more. So there's going to be things that each of you might be contributing to monthly that we haven't covered here. So for example, just some examples, you might have childcare. So like I have a nanny who gets a salary every month. You might have a cleaner who comes and helps out, or a cook who comes and helps out, or other domestic staff like drivers or security guards. Think about what they get paid and include that. You may have monthly prescriptions, like prescription drugs that you or someone in your family needs to take. You might wear glasses and need to have new glasses sometimes, or maybe you wear contacts and you have to get contacts on a regular basis. You might also have things like savings, that you're constantly putting money aside into savings and you want to have that line, or maybe you have some investments like that you contribute to on a monthly basis. Maybe you have some debt that you're repaying and that needs to be a line item so that okay, I need to have $500 every month to pay off this loan or this credit card or whatever that might look like. So if any of those apply to you, I'm sure something will that I've just mentioned, but if you can think of anything else that hasn't been covered in the top bit, please take a minute now to calculate all of those additional extra things and put a number against that. And then once you're done, add it all up and come up with your total number. Again, you do not need to share this number with us in the chat. It's for your eyes only, but I want you to come up with what that total number is for your monthly budget. Room in the slides before this don't have anything to do with this particular topic. They were around the money mindsets. We'll be sharing them afterwards, but this is the only one for budget. Okay, ladies, so you should now have a number written down. What is, like, how do you feel about that number? Don't tell me what the number is, but just tell me, you know, how do you feel about that number? Do you feel like it's big? Do you feel like it's scary? Do you feel like it's small? And my question also is, do you earn enough right now to cover that desired lifestyle? Are you paying yourself enough at the moment from your business or from other sources to cover that lifestyle? Nina says, no. Hanan says, scary. Yeah. And Ruth says that she doesn't pay herself currently enough. Yeah, Jihan, it's big compared to what I pay myself. It could be so it's not enough. I don't, says Hamdi. Yeah. And this response is super common. Like, I want you ladies to know that you're not alone in this, that, you know, not paying yourself enough is very, very common. Yeah, you're all sharing like much greater than your earnings. Joanna says no, Sahana says not enough. And so that is manageable for a time, right? If you have savings that can cover you for a bit as you're getting your business going, that's okay for a period of time. But if you continue to live beyond your means, you're going to end up in trouble. You're going to end up in a position where you're going to fear like not having money. You're going to stress out about stuff. You're going to maybe work too hard. You're going to undercut your prices just so that you can bring in more customers, hoping that that fills the gap. You're going to put yourself in a position of a lot of stress. So although it's okay for a time being to earn less than what you're spending, ultimately over time, you need to find a balance. And this number that you've calculated is what your business ultimately needs to pay you as a salary after taxes, so that you can live the life that you want to live. If you find that your business isn't currently paying you that, you need to find something in the interim to make up for that. So whether that be that you get support from a family member or a spouse or a friend, or you get a bank loan, or you get a part-time job to cover expenses, like you just need to, again, have this awareness that if you're constantly living outside of your means and spending more than you have, you're ultimately going to get into a position of trouble, whether that looked like a lot of debt that you accumulate and then you're having to pay off, or you're having to borrow from people and that makes you feel a certain way internally. So again, awareness really counts a lot here to stop this behavior before it becomes too big of a burden. And ways to do that in the beginning are, of course, to cut down on some of those non-essential things. So some of the leisure activities, some of the hobbies, some of the appearance stuff, some of the, and you know, even investments in some ways, like if it's not within your business, to rein those in a little bit whilst you're growing your business to a point where it can pay you more. And hopefully in the future training sessions, as we continue to talk about your business model, you'll get some clarity about how to go about doing that. So Solange shares, I've been increasing my salary for my business slowly until I achieve my target. For now, it guarantees my non-negotiable spendings. Yeah, perfect. And that's what I've done over the years too. Like you might start by paying yourself nothing because there isn't anything there. And then you can start to slowly pay yourself, slowly pay yourself, slowly pay yourself, and then increase that number every 6 months or every year. There's definitely also been times that through the 11 years of running business that I've had to stop paying myself again. So COVID years was a perfect example of that. In 2020, I just had to freeze my salary from the business and live off of savings for a little while because I knew that there wasn't going to be money coming in for a little bit as the world was kind of figuring out what was going on. So again, that's why having an emergency fund is super important, because when there are these low points in business, you know that you can kind of fall back on that and get by. Okay, let me see. Okay, so if you're not currently paying yourself enough, which I think most of you have shared, what changes can you make? What can you do either to reduce your spending or to increase your earnings? What changes can you make? Jehan, for me, I did not change my personal salary. As my business grows, I continue on reinvesting on my business. That's also okay. As long as the salary that you are paying yourself covers you and what you need. So Ruth says that she can sell more. Mm-hmm. What other changes do you ladies think that you can make if you're not currently paying yourself enough to cover your lifestyle or desired lifestyle?
Hi, Danielle. Lazy to type. Can I just
That's
speak
okay.
here?
Of course.
So for me, I put on video so that you can see yourself. I don't know if you see me.
I do.
For me, it's the same thing I do in my personal life, right? With my once I get paid, I manage my finances personally. Like when you were showing us to set up a budget, right?
Yeah.
I do that, track every cent. But then I take the same thing and I take it over to the companies. And in terms of determining how much I get paid, it needs to not only sustain me, it needs to sustain the team. And I also look at it in long term, the income that we have as a company, how far will it cover us, right? So it's more of making more money ensuring that there's more income in the company, then which will translate into my personal life. Yeah. Because then once that pond is sorted, then it will be able to can flow over to the personal side of it. Meaning I need to work more in terms of finding projects, more clients and offering the service to more clientele than what I currently have. So that's what I feel like I need to do. It for me, it's gonna need to start with the business, and then it will flow over to the personal side.
Exactly. And thanks for sharing that. That's exactly right. I mean, Ruth has also said the same, sell more. Another thing I'd like to counter you ladies with that are saying sell more is increase your prices. You might not need to sell more. You might just need to sell it at a slightly higher price, which will automatically bring more money into the business. So I would really encourage you all to sit down and look at your pricing, especially in advance of next week's session, where you're going to be going through that in more detail. Let me just kind of look through some of the comments here as well. So Kalkadan says, keep track of money invested so to avoid unnecessary issues. Hanan says, re-strategize my selling methods to pay myself and not spend beyond my income. Jihan, changes, I need to improve the margin, sell more, go international so that I do not have the margin culpability. Yep. Nina says, wait for the help of a mentor. That's also a great solution. Joanna, we need to up our production numbers. If we sell more, we'll have more money coming in. And in commodity market, increasing price will do more harm than good. Yeah, I understand that some of your businesses, you're not going to be able to necessarily increase your prices a lot. Maybe you can only increase them a little bit, especially if you, like Joanna says, if you have a commodity like spices. So you have to kind of keep an eye on what else the market is doing. I get that. So then it's about how do you increase your volume rather than your pricing. But for some of you, increasing your pricing will be a valid solution. Okay, so, you know, really not pricing out of a place from emotion, but rather from black and white numbers is going to, I think, help you quite a bit. Wow, we are going through things and we don't have so much time left, but I want to take you through the rest of the content. I will share with you ladies a spreadsheet after this class that helps you with this budgeting a little bit more. So I know right now we just did a quick and dirty calculation on maybe on even on a piece of paper. I will share with you a more robust spreadsheet that allows you to not only calculate your personal numbers, but also then the business numbers, and even how to price on top of that. So based on what your personal numbers and your business numbers are, to then come up with some pricing for your products and services that allows you to break even and cover your expenses. So I'll share that with you after. So the next thing is around keeping track of your money. I will also share a template with you for this purpose. So the only way to really know for sure if you're sticking to your budget is by keeping track of your money going out and your money coming in. My suggestions are to perform weekly record keeping. So whether that be using an online app or an Excel spreadsheet or even pen and paper, just actually writing down what you're spending and looking at that and seeing, you know, am I within my budget? And if not, what changes can I make? My second suggestion, and I know this isn't always possible, is where possible, though, to avoid straight out cash transactions. And the reason for this is because you have no way to really track cash transactions. Sure, you might get a receipt, but oftentimes we don't. So for me personally, we have mobile money here in Kenya. I don't know in all of your countries if you also have mobile money. But with mobile money, you're able to essentially, like, you're paying cash, but you're not, because you get an SMS that tells you how much you're spending and what your balance is and what your fees are. So if you can use mobile money, or if you can use a debit card or another form of payment where there's an additional record rather than cash, that can help you just to better keep track of the cash that's going in and out. The next thing is to keep your business and your personal expenses separate. I know that this can also be quite difficult to do as business owners. Sometimes we dip into our personal money to pay for things in the business. Sometimes we dip into the business money to pay for things in our personal lives. I know that people are guilty of both sides of that equation, but as much as possible, you want to try to keep those things separate. And if you are doing that stuff, if you are using your personal money to pay for the business, you want to treat that as a loan to the business and keep a record of it. So I, Danielle, have lent my business $100 to pay for XYZ. And in time, your business should be paying you that money back that you are putting into the business. And then the final thing is to use software to manage your invoices and your receipts so that you're not doing everything manually, that you have a record of it, that you can even get some reports that come out of it. But especially when it comes to invoicing, to, as much as possible, to make that a digital process and to use those apps that are available. You don't have to pay a lot of money for them. I use a free one called Wave Apps, which isn't available, unfortunately, in a lot of countries these days. They've restricted the currencies that they support, but there's others that are like it, and you don't have to necessarily pay anything for that software. You just have to access it and then use it. So these are some tips I have on record keeping. Again, like I said, I will share with you a template to help you to keep track of your expenses a little bit better. So if you're not doing anything at the moment, at least starting there will be a good start. And reviewing, you know, to see, like, I'm spending this much on a monthly basis. I'm going to skip this question because in the interest of time. The next thing I want us to look at is calculating your net worth. So your net worth is a combination of all of your financial assets and liabilities, or more simply put, it is what you own minus what you owe. What you own minus what you owe. So a positive net worth will indicate that you are on track to building wealth. Whereas a negative net worth will suggest that there are parts of your financial life that you might need to improve. So the higher your net worth, the more potential stability you're going to have during times of economic upheaval, because you'll have backup plans, you'll have money to fall back on. Okay, so the first step is calculating what you own. So consider the following, and again, don't share this number with us in the chat. This is private and confidential to you only, but to calculate what you own, you want to consider these different types of assets. So the first will be any current accounts that you have, checking accounts. The next will be any savings accounts that you have. This can be also, you might have multiples, so making sure that you add up all of these differences. The third thing might be investments. So maybe you have investment accounts, whether that's in money markets or stocks and bonds or cryptocurrency or property. Well, property actually is the next one for real estate. So maybe you have, here in Kenya, we have this concept called chama, which is a group of people that come together and collectively save and invest in things like that. So maybe you also have a community group that you're part of that does investments. Real estate, so any property that you own, whether it's land or physical property. Retirement accounts, so if you have a pension plan or if you have, investments in things that mature much later in life, and then any other assets that you might have. So take a minute to try to do this calculation. Again, it's just going to be a rough one. You can come back to this number later, but just to give you a rough idea of what your assets are currently. What do you think that number looks like? And again, don't share, just calculate. So how does this relate to credit score? Not very much. Your credit score is going to be, and again, it's different in every country. So I don't know specifically for South Africa, but I can share like how I know it works in other places. Your credit score is more about, it kind of relates to your net worth, because when a lender is looking at you, they'll assign a certain, for example, a certain credit limit on a credit card based on what your assets are and based on what your propensity of repaying any sort of debt looks like. So they might ask you questions in the process of, for example, applying for a credit card that asks you some of these numbers, like asks you what your current value is of your accounts, how much you're currently earning as a salary, and things like that, for them to determine how much of a limit to give you a credit limit. Now, your credit score is also influenced not just by what your assets might look like or what your propensity for, not just your assets, but like your salary might look like, but your credit score also takes into account how good of a borrower you have been over the years. So, for example, are you making payments on time? Are you only paying the minimum, or are you paying more towards whatever debt you accumulate? Because if you're only paying the minimum every month, a credit agency is going to see you as more risky, because they'll think that you don't really have the money to be paying the bigger chunk of money. You're just paying minimum payments. If you have late payments, if you have missed payments, those are all things that are going to negatively impact your credit score. Whereas things like duration of credit, timeliness of payments, amount of payments, utilization. So what I mean by utilization is if you have, for example, a credit limit on a card of $1,000 and you've used 700 of that, you might be seen as riskier than someone that's only used 100 of that. So even though that credit is available to you, sometimes if you're using too much of it, it will look as though you're relying on credit too much, and that might make you a little bit riskier. So as a blanket statement, your net worth itself isn't going to necessarily influence your credit score, but it's all those other factors that are going to bring it up or down. Okay, so that's what you own. You're now going to calculate anything that you owe. So for your debt, what you owe, you want to consider things like personal loans that you might have out, student loans that you might have if you've taken any for education for yourself or for your kids, any other loans that you might have. So maybe you have, like, for example, a car note and you're paying that down although I know in a lot of the countries that we stay in, credit isn't a huge thing. Like a lot of times we pay cash if we can, and we don't have credit. But anything like that, if you have credit card debt, and any other money owed. So for example, if you borrowed money from your mother and you need to pay your mother back in time, that would be considered something that you owe. If you borrowed money from a friend, that would also be something that you owe. So again, take a minute just to calculate any of these debts that you have out there, whatever form they might look like, and come up with a total number there. Okay, so you should now have a rough number. And again, don't put this in the chat, but I want you to come up with your total net worth. So now you're going to take the first slide. So all of the things that you own, the things that are your assets, and you're going to subtract all of the things that you owe, your debts. And now you're going to have that number, which is your current net worth. And right now it might be a rough number. Maybe you don't have exact balances on each of those things. That's okay. But I want you to now write down whatever your total is. For your eyes, excuse me, for your eyes only. Don't put it in the chat. But what I would like you to put into the chat is, how do you feel about the number that you calculated? What are some feelings that come up for you based on what number you now see? Sad. Sorry, Nina. Yeah, it's common to feel sad. And this is maybe the scared, Ruth shares scared. Yeah, these are super common feelings. And I don't have you do this exercise to make you feel bad or sad or scared or anxious. I really have you do these exercises so that now you have awareness. Now you know, okay, my net worth is low. It might mean that I'm in financial difficulty. It might mean that I need to do some work. I need to put some things aside and really start to make a conscious effort to do things differently and hopefully get you into a more positive position. Hamdi says that it makes her unhappy. Yeah. You know, I track my net worth every month. It's part of my monthly financial review, both for myself and for my business. And when you start paying attention to stuff, that's when changes can really take place. So I invite you to maybe do this calculation every month, to even, you know, create a spreadsheet that has each of your different accounts listed out and that you're updating the amount each month. One of my priorities last year, I took on a lot of debt during my pregnancy and during the few months after my son was born for, you know, maternity leave, because I couldn't really work at full capacity. I wasn't able to bring on as many clients as normally because I just didn't have the mental, physical or emotional bandwidth to do so. So I had to rely on debt for a while. So my goal last year was really to repay all of that. So for a long time, my net worth also made me feel sad and unhappy and scared and depressed. But I was able to then make a conscious effort every month to keep chipping down at that debt, chipping down at that debt, chipping down at that debt, whilst simultaneously trying to grow the balances in my different accounts so that, you know, what I own was becoming more than what I owed. And eventually what I owed was wiped out completely. Adez also says, sad, Jehan, unsecure, could be so motivated only because having done the previous exercise and being a tracker of my credit score, I expected it to not look good. Yeah, that's another thing I look at every month is my credit score, because as a result of me having to rely on debt for a while, my credit score actually plummeted after having been like great for so many years. And what I learned from that process was how quickly our credit score can drop when we hit a rough patch. And then it takes a lot longer to rebuild your score to a more positive number than it does for it to drop in the first place, which is very frustrating. And that's just how it works, unfortunately, in the financial world. So I don't want you to feel, well, your feelings are valid, whatever it is that you're feeling, whether it's scared, unhappy, insecure, and I want you to now do something about it. So the final part of today, today's session, and I'm aware that it's already 1 o'clock. So if you need to drop off, please just watch the replay for this last piece, but hopefully we can just finish up in the next 7 minutes or so. The last part I want us to really work on is building financial goals. So a financial goal is a target that you set for yourself when managing your money. It can involve saving, spending, paying down debt, earning, or even investing. So for example, they could include, I've said it before, paying down debt, creating an emergency fund, purchasing assets, funding your dream lifestyle, preparing for retirement, saving for education expenses, starting a business, and so much more. So I want you now to take this template that's in front of you. And again, you ladies will receive these slides after, oops. Sorry, Ruben, I think you started sharing and then, okay, let me come back and put my screen back up.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, it happens. Hopefully, okay, you ladies can now see the template again. So I want you to take this template, and I only want you to work on the first column today just for the sake of time, but to come back to the rest later. So the first column is short term. So what is a short-term financial goal that you have for yourself in the coming year, whether that's 6 to 12 months? Then I want you to think of a medium-term financial goal that you have for yourself. So that's now looking at maybe a 5-year horizon. And then a longer term financial goal, which would be maybe a 10-year horizon, and filling in the various pieces of that. So the first is, what exactly is your financial goal? What is the amount required to reach that goal? What is your target? What is your plan of action? And what is your first step? Now, I'm going to show you an example on the next slide so that you know what I mean by each of these pieces. Let me just move to that now. Okay, so this was the one that I did for last year. As I told you, I was really paying down my debt last year. So my financial goal was to create an emergency fund. I wanted to have savings so that in case I ran into some sort of slowness in business, or I needed to take time off again, or whatever that looked like, I had an emergency fund for both myself and for my business. The amount required for that emergency fund was 1 million Kenyan shillings, which is approximately $8,000 US. And my target for that was to hit that number by the 1st of April, 2024. So again, I did this last year. These are my things from last year. In order for me to hit that number of 1 million shillings, I needed to put aside 10,000 shillings per month, which meant that I had 10 months to do this process. So every month for 10 months to put aside 10,000 shillings so that I could hit that 1 million shillings by the start of April 2024. My first step in that process was to onboard 2 more clients, because by onboarding 2 more clients and knowing the amount of money that I would get from them, I would be able to put some of that aside based on the profit that I knew I was going to take from those 2 clients. So spend a couple minutes just working on the first column only of a short-term goal that you have for yourself in the coming year. So it might even just be between now and the end of December. and fill in what this looks like for you. And then after today's session, I would love for you to come back and do this for a medium-term goal and also a longer-term goal. But for now, fill in the bit for your short-term goal. Okay, take 1 more minute just to fill in that last, like that first column. And then when you're ready, I'd love for you to just share at a high level what that financial goal is for you. It doesn't need to be the details, but just that top line. So for example, on mine, it would be to create an emergency fund. So share in the chat with me what your financial goal is. And also, what is the first step that you need to take to get there? Also, I see that my math is wrong on this. In order to get 1 million shillings in 10 months, it would have been 100,000 per month. So I'm missing a 0 for my plan of action, but ignore that. Okay, ladies, feel free to share in the chat. We are going to move on very soon, just so we can close out the session. And if you don't have time to share now, feel free to share in the WhatsApp chat later too. And I also now want to open up to any questions or reflections that you have. So I know that Nina has shared already that the exercise has helped her a lot. At this moment, I'm thinking of a brighter future for my business. This sadness encourages me not to give up on my business. So if you have other reflections or questions that you want to share before we wrap up, please also do that in the chat. I'm really conscious of the time. I don't want to keep you ladies too much longer. And if you have questions later, again, feel free to pop them into WhatsApp and I'm happy to answer them there. So Hanan shares her financial goal is to sell shares of her company, and her first step is to incorporate 2 more corporate companies. Good. Thank you. Maybe you're all still diligently working on your templates, but please, if you do have anything to share, any questions that you have, feel free to type, feel free to come off and talk to me if that's easier. I want to give you all 1 more minute to wrap up any ideas so that we don't leave you hanging. Okay. I hope I haven't scared you all. Let me move on to what's next. So next week we're going to be having, so Colofelo says financial goals, franchise the brand and work into the sale of my first business to venture into property. Beautiful. Calcadana was very insightful and interesting. I see my weakness and I'm willing to take the first step. Solange, this was a very pertinent topic for me at the moment. I strongly believe that the next step as an entrepreneur is to make the best of my archetype and take bigger steps. Nice. Jehan, financial goal, have 5,000 US dollars in the 2 next, sorry, hold on. Everything's going so quickly. So Jehan, financial goal, have 5,000 US dollars, the 2 next month in the company bank account. First goal, close with 3 hotels. Beautiful. Hanan gave us a good wake-up call. Thank you. You did not scare us at all. You're welcome. Like, seriously, this is a topic I am super, super passionate about because I want to give you ladies financial independence, financial literacy, financial confidence, so that when you go into next week's training session on money, that you feel more empowered to pay attention to it, that you don't allow any sort of beliefs that you might hold from the past to stand in your way of looking at finances and making decisions about finances and pricing and selling and other ways that you need to run your business. And, you know, as Solange shares, like just making the best of your archetype, knowing, okay, this is how I am, and these are the limitations of that, these are the strengths of that, and how can I better work in that space to make the most of it. So next week's training is about money. So how will you manage your money? It's around financial management and also investment readiness. You're going to be talking next week about your business numbers, whereas today was much more about your personal numbers. And of course, that has an impact. Your business has an impact on that, but we're really going to be looking at your business next week. So Monica has asked you to think about 2 things as homework for next week. And we'll also send this to you in an email and remind you in the chat. So the first is what has already been explained last week in the business model canvas, the lean canvas. So what is your cost structure? Meaning, you know, what do things cost for you? Again, I'll share a spreadsheet with you later today that will help you to kind of think about this also. What are the variable, fixed or mixed costs that you typically incur at your company? So a variable cost is one that changes based on output. So like if you sell more, then you have to pay more because you need more of whatever that is to produce more goods. A fixed cost is something that doesn't change at all. So for example, your rent or your Wi-Fi bill or your salaries, those are fixed costs that regardless of how much you sell, you could sell nothing, you still have to pay those fixed costs. And mixed costs are a combination of the 2. Sometimes they vary, sometimes they're fixed, sometimes they're a blend. So think about what all of those different costs look like for your business. And then what is your revenue structure? I mean, how do you make money? What are the different ways that you make money, whether that be from the sale of products or services or consulting or property or whatever? What are the different ways that money comes into your business? Then she also wants you to think about your business in the future. So think about it 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years ahead. Do you need investment? If you do need investment, how much do you think you need, and what exactly would you spend it on? So don't just say, oh, I need $5,000, but I need $5,000 so that I can put $1,000 towards a salesperson per month. I need to invest in marketing. I need to buy this app so that I can manage my processes better, whatever it looks like. So do you think you need investment? If so, how much, and what would you use it for? And are you aware of the risks of a potential investor that a potential investor would have in your business? So think about what risks might be there. Like maybe there's a risk that you won't earn money back to repay that investor. Maybe there's a risk that your business closes down. Maybe there's a risk that there's a natural disaster in the country that you live in, which, you know, wipes out infrastructure. Like just think about any sort of potential risk that might be there. Okay. All right. So I know that we are way ahead of time by 15 minutes. So thank you again for sticking with me and for being patient and allowing me to continue to take you through the various exercises. I do hope that you learned something today, that you have increased your awareness today, that you feel in some ways more confident, even if the number is scary or low or makes you sad. And, you know, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to support you through this. So if you have questions, if you need anything, hit me up on WhatsApp, let me know. I will share with you over the course of the afternoon some templates to help you with these various things that we talked about. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. All right. So thank you, ladies. Have a beautiful afternoon, a great week ahead, and we'll see you all again soon. You're welcome. You're all very, very welcome.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Thank you so much. And see you next week, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.